Good morning,
Yep.
Dr. Brad. I
Here
have
we are. Here we are.
I have fizzy
Switch.
water.
Yeah.
Fill up my fizzy water. I'm sorry, Dr. Brad. I guess we were talking past each other this morning. I was 10 minutes late, so I sent Brad an email that I'm giving you a 10-minute warning, even though I'm 10 minutes late.
I saw the warning and I'm like, guys, wondering where you were. I'm like, what happened?
But checking the wrong email.
I looking in the wrong checking the wrong inbox. Like, okay, it sounds like a parable for
You
failure
know,
and
Dr.
disaster.
Brad's a workaholic, guys. I don't know if you know this, but Dr. Brad's always busy with something.
Mm,
Yeah. So he's it's like he's got two jobs plus he's got these hobbies and friends and the house and all this other stuff
that's what's going
and
on.
business ideas. So I figured maybe Dr. Brad needed a vacation day.
Ugh,
That wasn't it.
that was not what was happening, but you're probably right either way. Like, I won't argue against that. Life is good.
All right. I assume that given the amount of stuff you got going, you don't have any topics you want to touch on this week.
Not much. I'm watching my Twitter feed and it changed because I'm following different people and I'm getting different. The feed is changing character a lot, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to process that and understand what that means. Is it topically related to the current events of the day, or is it due to being fed other?
Right. So how it works is they change the algorithm, so it depends on who you interact with. The problem is the more numbskulls you interact with, the more numbskulls come into your feed.
I ran into a few right-wing numbskulls, two of them.
Yes.
It's like I don't even respond to them because it's like you're on my team. You need to just stop talking right now
Yes.
because it's not helping our team at all. Me interacting with you is gonna make it worse. So that just can't help. Like that was a little disturbing. That was yesterday. I was like,
Oh well.
okay, it'll be all right.
Well, I had a good one this morning. One of the guys, I don't know Heimdaller's real name.
Right?
So I've asked him and he's told me. I've just forgot. I can't. The whole alias thing drives me nuts.
Right.
Um, but anyway, he said, well, he said this X, Y, and Z also violates concurrency between the classes. And I'm like, I didn't think of that. That's right. That's good. And so whenever somebody comes up with something, they show they grasp a first principle and they're applying it. Just feels I just want to be a teacher and hand out a little fucking gold star on their head or something. It makes me so happy to see this working. So
That's good. Yeah, I'm impressed by the work that the guys are doing.
they're pretty amazing, really. I mean,
You can't ever tell what's going to stick. It's like everybody's working their own angles and picking up on different little shreds and patching it together to make new pieces. That's
yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, that's kind of the virtue because you try to actually what you try to do is keep people straight on the method alone, right? Method, first principle, science. But if they go off and explore their own niche, like that's good because that's just division of labor.
Yes.
I used to be able to remember the big things that people contributed. Like I still remember Eli and sovereignty. I've forgotten Bill did a couple things. I've just forgotten them all, right? But it's great that we've had so many people just throw in this idea or that, and it fits in some little. You never put when you play with Legos when you're a kid, because I had Legos were expensive when I was a kid, but
Yes.
Legos. Put together, there was shit. I don't have a Lego that fills in that spot, right? It's a little bit like that. It's like, geez, that worked out really well. So I'm pretty happy. Wrote a piece on. Somebody asked me this morning, how would you go after? What would be the argument you use in court against the people who are trying to take away gun rights and all this other stuff. And so I wrote a piece on that, and it turns out that looks like another keeper.
Yeah.
Because it basically outlines the argument. And somebody else asked me a question about the Ninth Amendment the other day, and I couldn't figure out what they were asking me. For some reason, I interpreted it in the wrong context. And I said, well, the Ninth Amendment is just saying that there is natural law, and we may not, just because we've enumerated some rights here, doesn't mean we've enumerated all of them. But this gets, so I mean, that just means there are other natural, inalienable, natural inalienable rights and obligations other than ones in there. And so this gets back to my, it's just making me think, it just gets back to my original criticism that they could have stated this pretty clearly at the beginning of the Constitution, but they state, some of it in the Declaration, some of it in the Constitution, but they don't really get into the foundation of the natural common concurrent law.
Right.
And what that means is that, and they don't even have the concept, because it'd be alien to them. They don't, in other words, they just assumed responsibility, right? They didn't put out that was the purpose of
Right.
what they were doing, right? They didn't put that out the purpose. When they state the Second Amendment, they assume that you made the connection, right? The preservation of a free people. But I mean, it's kind of short. They did that a lot of if you look at the way they drafted the Constitution, they did a lot of shortening things up.
Yes.
And I'm not sure all of them were good.
That's right. It's like,
I mean,
you need to go with the long form here.
Right. And so if you just plug a few holes, like the natural law is, or this is the construction of it, like we've done in your work and mine, right? We've made this strict construction of it. Well, then, it becomes pretty obvious what's a natural right, obligation, and alienation. And everything else in there isn't natural. It's an artificial, a contractual right, obligation. And it may be inalienable or not.
Right.
But if the logic to it has gotten lost in all this legal positive nonsense in order to empower governments to increasingly remove responsibility from people and intrude on the lives of responsible people. Right? This is basically what they've done. And they've done that. They've legitimized themselves by saying, we need to take care of the irresponsible people.
Right.
Well, I mean, the church used to take care of that. The state used to take care of the responsible people. And when somebody says to me this morning, I'm continuing this thread,
Right.
that you said you disagree with the separation of church and state. I says, I'm not sure that's the right answer. I think conflating church and state is a problem for specifically that reason. You try to take care of the responsible people and the irresponsible people. I don't mean irresponsible, the people who can't be responsible or not yet able to be responsible, and they need care. And then you have the people who are agentful and they can be responsible, and they need institutions of cooperation. They basically need defense. So it's two different kinds of care: defense care and assistance care. And so I'm like, well, there's say freedom of religion. I don't believe in freedom of religion. My argument is that religions are no different from cultures, institutions, and civilizations. And so you can say, well, I want freedom of Christian religion. I want freedom of natural European religions, right, which would be Christian or Germanic or ancient, whatever. But it's something that's in ours. Anything that's not incompatible with natural law. Right. But, all other religions are incompatible with natural law. So does the state need to do anything other than say that? I'm not sure. Right. I'm not sure the state needs to say anything other than that. Right. This is the way we do it. And other religions are basically seditions. You might claim it's not, but you'd be wrong. Because in essence, they put the presumption as every religion puts a presumption of values into something that's a priority above all others. well, effectively Christianity and European tradition put above all others two sets of priorities. One is sovereignty, and the other is extension of basically trust building, extension of kinship love to non-kin outside the kin circle. It's basically treat everyone as a kin, which we turn into treat everyone as a customer, which in government means treat everyone as a peer, right? I mean, it's that level. Christian kin is love. Middle class is customer, and upper class is peer, right? There's no. So we're trying to treat everybody. We treat it. We call it equally, but it's they treat them equally, but does not mean they are equal,
Right.
And that spectrum. So it's possible to encode all that and say, well, there's the state doesn't need to do anything except prevent hostile religions. Right. I mean, that's really the purpose of it. Now, as for saying the state should control a religion, well, has it worked out pretty well in the UK? It's hard to say. It didn't work out well in continental Europe because the state decided it wanted to be the religion. Right. They want all the power. They don't want to compete with the caretakers. I think that's actually the problem. Just like we have male and female, and people tried to make it.
They're competing with the caretakers to the exclusion of the other caretakers.
Correct. And so what happens, of course, is that you get the monopoly effect instead of the bipolar effect. That's good.
It is bipolar.
Yeah, you get a bipolar effect instead of the dipole effect. Yes. So it's just another one of those examples where we started out with men writing all the rules for men.
Right.
Because they were the polity.
That's right.
Now we've added others into the polity, and there's this desire just as there was in psychology to say, what's the ideal person? Or in mathematics, what's the ideal form?
Well, right. It's the average, and there's no average.
There is no average. So what you want is to look for equilibria instead. So I would flip it around and say there should be a care tax and a state tax, right? I mean, whatever you want to talk about it. And those things should be different. And people put their money where they want it. One of those others. And the reason being that you want the competition between the two, where you have the demand generated on the care side and the supply and limits on the state side. Make sense?
Yeah.
This is the supply and this is the limits. And I think that would be fine because we'd all have someone to go to for our interests.
Yeah.
So I mean that's I just wanted to make that arc there because I've been thinking a lot about this week about how this, this fundamental shift we're asking people to make from, Weberian ideal types, right? Which is the explanation of something throughout history, but the post-Weberian understanding that it's actually equilibria that computes the ideal rather than the ideal that we
it's not fixed.
It's not a fixed thing.
It's a relational function,
right, between two poles. So anyway, did I get that? Did I make that one arc there today? Did I do okay?
That was good.
Right. So how do I not make you tired this week?
Pardon me?
I felt really guilty last week.
Oh my. Oh no, you shouldn't feel guilty.
I shouldn't?
No, I shouldn't feel guilty. Guilty is not very productive, useful.
You're such a fucking stoic. The thing you could do is actually write down Brad's philosophy of stoicism, because
short.
It's very short. It's like the women's version is like the four agreements. which
Okay.
is always tell the truth, always do your best, don't take it personally, and I forget the other one.
That sounds about right.
Right.
It's not personal. It's just impersonal and slighting at the same time.
Let me get this. I found this by doing them. I found this if I talk, don't make assumptions. Be impeccable with your
Right.
word. Don't take it personally. Don't make assumptions and always do your best. For most women, that's the 10 Commandments. Right? I said it, that's what it is, right? That's my, if I gave my word, I gave my word. I don't need to take it personally. Has nothing to me, it's all on you.
And it's just funny because it's like it seems personal because it's happening to you,
Yes. Well, that's
but
how
it's
you read
not.
everything, right? Which is hysterical because women tell me you can't tell that men and women different argument. I have like 4 basic things, questions I can ask women, and they will fail the test every single time because they're women. I mean, it's how, right? It's how they're wired, right? I mean, it's just
Okay.
right? So they're like, you can't tell me I can't tell you're a woman because I can ask you, no more than 4 or 5 questions. I mean, max all they'll always fail.
That's where I was going to go.
Right? Responsibility, they'll always fail. Responsibility, accountability, they'll always fail. Assumptions, they'll always fail. Projection, they'll always fail. Right? I mean, it's just like they always fail every one of those tests. Like, don't tell me I can't tell the difference between a man and a woman thinking, because you'll fail every freaking logical test of those tests. It's gonna happen. You can't avoid it. It's genetic. It's in your code. Give
I
it
saw
up.
I saw this video today that was kind of funny. It was like this transgendered woman to masculine, okay? And she was crying about how lonely it is being a man. It's like it sucks being a man. You don't understand until you go do it. But it's like imagine having a female brain inside a male body and the people treating you like a man and not like a woman. It would just make you want to cry all the time.
Yes, it's horrible.
It's awful. Because she was teary-eyed in it, but you're now you're in the wrong body.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out why is it that when a bunch of men together, we can sort of figure out if anything happens, this X of us will handle it. I don't know how to, I just know it. I don't know if you're the same, but if you're in a room, a bunch of people, there's, you know, there's always a few not quite males that'll run, and there's always some number of guys who just look at it and says, oh, we can handle this, right? I mean, it's
the 3 Marines in the French trolley that assaulted the person, took them down. It's like you go to the trouble and fix it.
Yeah, it's not, it's just another problem.
That's right.
Not a crisis.
This is what we do. It's
right?
time to do the thing we do.
Yes, it's just another problem. Anyway, so those 4 agreements, I really like. Getting back to your philosophy, right? So I was thinking about the 4 agreements, and I learned a lot. I mean, I learned so much from every non-American woman I was in a relationship with.
Oh,
and this particular Canadian woman who doesn't think I love her, but I do. She's beautiful and not a rocket scientist, right? I mean, this is one of those, I went for pretty, right?
nothing wrong with that.
Pretty and feminine, and there's not only is there's nothing wrong with it, it's effing awesome.
Right.
And if it hadn't been for certain environmental problems, in other words, different countries are easier or harder to go to work in, and I had another health problem pop up. So I'd be married to her, right? She's absolutely fantastic. Now, so she taught me about this. She says, like, her world was really simple. She's like, I keep my word. I don't take it personally. I don't make assumptions, and I do my best. Right? And if I've done that, I'm good. Oprah has one more, which I like, which is a pretty funny. I think it's funny for me to refer to Oprah.
Right.
Right. I just think
I was trying to hold it back.
you were holding it back. But Roper has one more to help women think problems through, because it's hard for women to get in the habit of thinking problems that help them with self-regulation, right? And IQ helps. That's why you like smart women, right? Conscientiousness helps, but there's a lot of women who are just very female, and very female is a wonderful thing if they can regulate it.
Right.
Right. And so the other Roper's thing is, how are you going to feel about that in 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, or 5 years?
Right.
I think she uses 3 minutes, 3 days, 3 months,
Yeah.
and 30 years from now. And if you think through that, you're going to end up with, this isn't going to fucking matter.
That's right. It puts a perspective on it.
Right.
Time stamper.
And so I want to get to yours in a minute. I'm trying to get to yours. So I'm going from the feminine to mine.
Right.
I'm sorry. My sort of thing is, I'm responsible for everything, but there's only so much I can do. If I did the best I could, then I'm okay with it. Right. And then my last one is, what's the worst that can happen?
Oh my.
Right. That's how
Right.
that's literally how I think. I'm responsible no matter what it is. Right.
Right. Right.
Can I solve it? I probably can. Do I have time? Okay. If I solve it the best I can, well, that's the best I could.
That's
Right.
it. That's it.
That's the best. And lastly, what's the worst that can happen? Now, the truth is, the first thing I think of is, what's the worst that can happen here? And most of the time, it's like, doesn't matter. Right? And the flip side is, which is the 4-quadrant thing, is this urgent and important? Then I
Yes.
feel. Right? Is this
Right. How important is it for me to do it now?
right? If I have to do it right now, it's urgent and important, I failed. What I have to be working on is what important but not urgent.
That's right.
Right? Because that way I'm using my abilities to their fullest. And so, I mean, that's like, if I put down my philosophy, it'd actually be, there's a moral component in there, which is part of always, be responsible. But I said that mind. So I listened to yours, and you have a slightly different thing. All right. And because you do feel a similar sense of responsibility for things, but you're also pretty comfortable by saying, this isn't worth my time, or I can't quite figure out how you get at that. But it'd be very, very interesting to see, because you do a lot of stoicism, and it's not the macho bullshit, I could do anything stoicism, right? It's just real stoicism. It's like, that's not worth you thinking about, or that's an unconstructive set of thoughts, right? Or that might be true, but this is not worth working on right now, right? You have this very clear set of thoughts, and it'd be interesting to see that written down.
All right. Yeah, it's hard. It's like it's interesting, because I got pinged by a couple of the people on our team for just nonsense, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna to say anything to that, because
Right.
it's just,
which is another thing you do. Which is another thing is the negative the most effective negative reinforcement is non-response, right? It's ignoring it.
Because it's like the what's the most positive outcome that can come of me responding is worse.
Yes.
It's worse than me not responding. I'm like, okay, we'll circle back to that one later, but not right now, and that's okay.
Yes.
This is interesting to watch you see, because I'm watching the people interacting on the right and having little tiffs about minor things that are the amount of heat being generated that is counterproductive vastly exceeding the amount of light being generated that is productive.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, okay, that's interesting. It's interesting to observe that in real time.
It's therapy. I find it tiring. One of the things you get beat into you in art school. This is funny. You wouldn't think about this, but one of the things you get beat into at art school. I mean, I went to a conceptual art school, right? I mean, I didn't go to like your ordinary place. It was art theory school. So I got taught art theory, and art practice, right? history, theory, and practice, which is you can't leave that place unless you know how to make a lithograph. You can't leave it unless you know how to throw fire. Not only that, you know how to make clay, right?
Wow.
Of different kinds.
That's cool, man.
Different elasticity, right? Store it, make something of it, figure out what cones to use at what temperature and what kiln for how long, and the dry. You can't get out without knowing that.
That's cool, man.
Right? So you can't get out without knowing. This is how you work with wax. This is how you work with clay. This is how you work with plaster. This is how you work with soft stone. This is how you work with hard stone. This is how you work with bronze, which you've asked me about before. Yes, I know how to pour fucking bronze, right?
That's awesome.
So you can't get out without knowing how to do positive drawing, a line drawing, right? All right. You can't do it without, hours of fucking drawing, figure drawing, which I don't mind when Rudy Zallinger picks the ballerinas as models.
It's all about casting.
When Nancy Hoffman picks other ugly lesbian chicks, it's really, really offensive, really gross sometimes. But anyway, she does it on purpose. She did it on purpose a long time ago, right? She's dead now. But so you have to know how to draw positive, negative spaces, draw the background.
Right.
Foreground, right? You have to know and you have to know how to do acrylic paints, which is layering, and which is layering because they're not transparent, or it's hard to make them transparent. It's more like paint by numbers and layers. And then you know how to have oil paints, which is all reflection from the background through the layers, transparent layers. You have to know all that stuff. Then you have to know color theory, design theory. Right. And then they get into the meaning, right? Which is you have to do the conceptual stuff is what's the concept being held here, which is actually the hard part. The rest of it's kind of cool, but the theory shit is actually, it's like philosophy, right? There's like a million variations in it. So you get into art. So what I learned, one of the things they beat into you in art school is oh shit, what was the top? I think I might have lost it. Shit, did I lose it on that rant? I might have lost it on that rant.
It's possible. I will try to attempt to get you back on track.
Well, they beat you into a bunch of things. One of them is opinions mean shit, judgments don't, right? Doesn't matter if you like it if you can't describe why, right? Oh God, it had something to do with stoicism. I can't believe I won that beautiful arc in order to make a point, and I lost it. God
no,
damn.
it's just it's fleeting.
Well, I went through man. What did they beat into you? So they beat into you, at least in my school. We got beat into that, which I said, it's not an opinion. You have to do an analysis, right? If you can't express yourself, don't you talking about? Oh, I forgot. I got it. I knew I would get it back. And the answer is, it's not fucking therapy. If it's therapy, go see a fucking therapist. It's work. If you're not doing work, you're doing therapy. If you're doing therapy, get the fuck out. Excuse me. I just did it again. I just swore, and I'm going to get another ding in the what do you call it?
The AI is watching.
The AI is watching us for the non-inclusive terms. So wait a minute, I got that. That was those things are really better. And you wouldn't think that, but that's what a real art school is, right? I mean, not like today where you go, but
that made me a little bit sad.
Just right, you can't get. Yes, like I said, you could used to be able to go to California College of Art. You used to be able to Rhode Island School of Design. All these people, all this stuff. I know it just went out. It seems to have gone. Used to go to Yale. I could get an undergraduate degree in fine art that was an actual degree in something. I mean, I just gave you evidence of some of just the touch of the stuff, right? Right? You have to know your craft, right? Like you have to know any other class, and your craft contains. I mean, I'm sure in your world it would be, different organs and system or different systems of the body, etc. Like
right.
that. And so in engineering, you have to, I mean, I studied engineering, you need certain things. I studied certainly electronic engineering, which I'm never going to get out of my head despite wanting to, right? I studied computer science, which is how, bits and bytes work, right? So when you look at these things, they're they're disciplines, right? And so you can learn art as a technical skill, right? You can learn it as that way. The problem is, can you transcend the technical skill into applying it to something meaningful? Right, which is now why we have crap Hollywood scripts, is because that's what's happening. Is they haven't learned. They haven't learned the craft. They learn the craft of script writing, but they haven't learned the craft of high art, that's how you distinguish craft art and high art. Right? High art's the stuff that has some meaning to your cultural relevance. Art is something that has relevance to you, or is decorative or pleasing or useful in some way. Craft is something that is it has some other kind of use, but you've put aesthetic because people started doing that early. Aesthetic investment. Anyway, so the event is therapy. So how did I get on the thing of therapy, not having therapy from Brad Stoicism? Oh, the answer is that a lot of people need therapy because they don't have either the four agreements for the female or Stoicism for the male. Does that make sense?
That was nicely tied little bow.
Right. And so the interesting thing about Christianity, when combined with the military, and we forget how many guys had to do military work, right? You farmed in the spring, you fought in the summer, and you farmed in the fall.
Wow.
and you survived and made shit in the winter, right? I mean, that's really, but it's the church and the state, right? And so that combination was good because it's taught non-aggression and extension of kinship love to people who are whatever. And then you had the military participation, which made you order and duty and hierarchy. Right? It's a pretty good marriage, right? And so the problem we have is today is like church and state. Well, I mean, the state's trying to become the church. The academy's become the church and state, and the academy state complex is fucking evil. I did it again. I swear again.
It's true.
All right.
Now it is so it's a collapse of the trifunctional system and a monopolization of the power by the linguistic cunning people. It's like those people are that they're ethically compromised as well, because therefore momentary agreement, incomplete information transfer, and so they're taking advantage of people that are unfortunate.
Right. Well, and to practice trifunctionalism and not understand it is kind of bizarre.
Right.
Right. Nobody else practices it. But we practice trifunctionalism. Well, because it's what you get if you put the law first. It's the only thing that can happen. But if you put the faith or the state first, you won't get trifunctionalism. You get a hierarchy instead of an equilibrium. So that's why I say, somebody asked me, well, I don't want to agree with the separation of church and state. I think that I was like, well, I think that you haven't thought that through. Because just as somebody brought up, we didn't, Curt, I was think that violates concurrency across between the classes and regions. Now, you said classes in that case doesn't matter. And commonality, it would violate commonality. This would violate self-determination and sovereignty, or violate reciprocity. But one of the other things that we can violate is trifunctionalism. And I suppose that ought to be in other words, that's as important a constitutional foundation,
right?
As commonality and concurrency, because otherwise you don't understand why the law is sovereign. Is because there is no ideal. There's only an equilibrium between masculine and feminine needs. Care and defense. And that equilibrium is always just continuously discovered as whatever equilibrium satisfies the problem in the moment, year, age or epoch. Thought I didn't have anything interesting to talk about today, but turns out we did.
Yes, it's true. Got a little art school exposition. That was good.
Now we get to add to trifunctionalism to commonality and concurrency.
That's right.
Commonality, concurrency, and trifunctionalism is probably the hierarchy we should reinforce in the foundations of the Constitution, which the founders didn't. They organized the thing by commonality. They organized it by concurrency. They organized it by trifunctionality.
Yep. It's just a matter of being explicit in your work.
Well, the problem is the people think it's arbitrary. No, realize
Right.
it's just science. You know what I mean? Or
No, I think it's interesting. It's like that it was so self-evident to those guys that they couldn't think of writing it down.
Thought about that this morning a little bit. And the reason is that it's not just the left that got misled by the Industrial Revolution.
That's right.
It's everybody.
Well, it's this profoundly confusing moment of vast acceleration of human potentials. And so therefore the distortions, that it's just silly putty. Your civilization just got stretched out into new dimensions that it was unimaginable a minute ago. And it's like, it's just going to make everything funny looking for a minute.
Well, you think all those limits are gone, right? Rather than those limits are there. They're going.
We haven't found them yet.
Right.
They're
going
projecting into the space. Yeah.
So it's like, empires used to be it's just a great difference between federations and empires. Empires used to be a great thing because you could standardize trade, law, currency, and so you could vastly increase cooperation across an empire. And partly because what you're really doing, I wrote this up a long time ago. I was really surprised how many people were kind of awed by it, which is that it happens in small, very without political orders, is the rent seeking is exhaustive. So the family's rent seeking on the individual, the village leadership the villagers are rent seeking on all the other villagers, the chieftains rent seeking on all the villagers, right? The chieftains battle for rents over trade routes. I mean, so what happens is when you get a government, they're jealous.
Yes.
Right. They're jealous. And so they try to eliminate all the rent seekers.
All the other rent seekers.
Right. And so they centralize rent seeking. Now, this turns out to be incredibly rewarding because it decreases the cost.
Right, it's the efficiency of rents is down.
Right, it's just incredibly effective to eradicate all those middlemen. Right, that's what's happening. So the problem you get to is the point where that is dependent upon a certain level of scarcity, but there's a flip that happens, and that flip happens when it's not everybody's habituated into this thing, and all of a sudden there's surplus. All right. Now the surplus is being captured, and they're like, "What the fuck? You're not decreasing our rent, the parasitism upon our rents, and now you're taking the surplus, and now you're the parasite instead of the person who's getting paid to eliminate all the intermediary parasites." Right? I mean, that's really what was happening. So the state becomes the parasite, and then they start looking for reasons for it, but all of it's just parasitism. Anyway. So what you have is you have this flip to where now it starts to be you start having the central authority being the bigger parasite than
the little guys.
And so what you have is a demand for federations, which is local control. So you got to think of it as a stepwise function.
That's right.
Right. And so you want federations for you want independent states for nationalism for local control. And then within nationalism, you want regionalism. so that I can have the norms, traditions, and values I want, but trade is still equal among inside the state, and trade is still equal across the federation, just as trade was somewhat equal across the empire. So it's a step.
So that's where we're heading.
Right.
But it's like, okay, the trick is the transition too, from the imperial state to the federated
Because
state.
no criminal wants to give up his means of crime. So we have a huge federal government that think it's okay to produce this crime. It's not
Well,
just
they don't regard it as a crime; they regard it as a good.
right. Well, but so does every criminal, right? I mean,
Of course, know how
right?
good it is.
Yeah.
I like I say, go to Virginia, and in Northern Virginia, it's like being in the Imperial Center. It's just such high robbery occurring, all flowing to that place, man. It's like, wow, look at all this.
God, it's so painful.
Wait, so one of my friends works as he's a personal trainer for like 8 octogenary in Northern Virginia people who had land. And so they're wealthy by land. And they think it's by some virtue of their own that they have gained incredible wealth. And it's like, okay, you can believe whatever you want, I suppose. It's okay. It's just fortune favors the lucky.
Well, your ancestors made a good choice.
It's just luck. It's great.
Is it luck? I don't know. Your ancestors, like what my great grandfather and my grandfather did is up to and leading into the Great Depression, they bought everything they could get their effing hands on. And
No, that's smart.
right. Well,
but I think there's these farmer types that bought, had hundreds of acres of land that happened to be near the future imperial center, and you lucked into it.
Yeah, okay, but again, that's like okay, so yes, you there's a difference between it isn't though that their ancestors didn't make an investment.
No, it's not. It's just they get a disproportionate advantage by virtue of luck, which is because it was unpredictable 150 years ago that this 100 acres so far from the future imperial center would actually be part of the greater urban.
Is there any, so I just want to play with you with this. Is there any capital investment you can make that isn't like that? No.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's like this is, but you think about someone who has their family invested in 150 years ago in 150 acres in the middle of Illinois, and it's like this same kind of investment, but it's like, okay, it's just
right. So what the thing I want to agree with you on is don't think you're so fucking great when it wasn't you. Right,
which is humility is good.
My grandfather acted like he cared about the price of stuff when he was closing in on 100, and it cracked me up. They just cracked me up. I mean, talk about a silver spoon. I mean, his father died and he got all that money. Right? I mean, all of that. Cars and private schools and multiple houses and ocean liner trips, and back when traveling on ocean liners was a big deal, and those kind of things, right? So I remember him coming back from Greece and telling me about, I was a little kid, Parthenon and all sorts of stuff. Well, because you could finally get there by airplane, and so it's not exactly anyway, so it's like that he turned it, he made more money with the money. That's always the trick, right?
That's not an easy trick. As
long as you're making more money with the money, that's pretty good. Then there's I won't tell you their name, but there's a famous, somewhat famous big family on the West Coast, which I know closely. And that's their whole thing is that the way they stop fighting over who can take money is the only people that can take money are people who make money. You can only get money out if you put money in, and that's why That's why the family wealth keeps growing. Then they're German, of course.
That's how you do it.
So anyway, I feel like did I distract you? I watched.
No, I think that was the right answer though, is to develop a family culture for acquisition that is self-sustaining, and then you have a positive family function, as opposed to a dissipative one.
Yeah, I mean, it just was assumed that we would grow up and own our own businesses.
Hmm.
And that's what you did, right? That's what the family does. You run a business. Right? And so everybody ran a business. I mean, the only person who didn't run his own business was my Uncle Richard, who was one of the top guys at Anheuser-Busch. He'd roll over in his grave if he probably did roll over in his grave over the last
No.
Anheuser-Busch debacle. Dick, you name Richard, and they called him Dick, which is, that's that used to be a thing, but it's not. They don't use that anymore. But your only job is to keep unions out of Anheuser-Busch. If the unions get in here, you won't be. That's what he was told. That's how things used to be.
About that. That's straightforward. It's amazing you can afford a guy to do that. Right?
He was somebody I could relate to him, because he was the youngest of my father's brothers, and I was the oldest child.
Oh.
So I knew him when he was in college.
Hmm.
Right. So it was, it was enough of a range that I could sort of want to. But anyway, so what are we trying to get at here? I was trying to get out to Noah said, and I posted this, the biggest problem prohibiting teaching is people having control over their emotions. All right, teaching anything meaningful. And there is at least a feminine, which is the four agreements, and a masculine, which is the stoic. The problem is we need to reduce stoicism to those basic principles. And you're actually the most stoic person I know.
How strange.
Not really. It's just very you. Because people think stoicism has to be some Marcus Aurelius sort of thing, or it has to be close to religion. It isn't. It's just mindfulness. Right? It's just producing mindfulness. I mean, this is, what do I have? I tease you all about this all the time, and you tease me because I get flustered about stuff. It's not worth thinking about. Yet I go to you and I'm like, I'm worried that you're having the same fluster I am, and of course you don't. So anyway, so I have sort of this middle road myself, and it'd be interesting to have that, because I was hoping Jordan Peterson would go that route, and he didn't.
Well, it's kind of interesting to watch his work, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? How does that play out? How does it work? And does it work? And is it going to be forward looking enough to function?
Yeah.
Because that's why I do the work I do with you, which is like, what's the most value added for the future potential at the moment? And it's like, we'll make the thing that will outlast whatever disaster befalls us now.
Yes.
That's all. And it's,
people used to say, when I was running businesses, people would say, why don't you work in the academy and teach? I'm like, because I don't kiss dicks. And it's
just saying.
It's just offensive to me, right? Or why don't you work in a big company? I'm like, because you have no control. You're just kissing dicks. It makes me fucking nuts, right? But if you build your own company, you're in control, right? If you succeed,
right.
you succeed. If you fail, right? You take a lot of risk, but I'm not afraid of,
Right.
I'm comfortable in my competence, right? And if
Right.
I'm not, then I'll get out of the business.
That's
So,
right.
so you, so you're trying to produce this sort of mindfulness, right, in everybody. And so, how do you? It's one thing if you have the innate intelligence. It's another thing if you have the innate character. What
Okay.
happens if you don't not only have the innate character, but you have the feminine problem
Hmm.
of empathizing and neuroticism,
Hmm.
right? And so we have to produce this spectrum. And and we used and people think get back to it. People think stoicism has to be woo-woo. It doesn't. It's really the difference with stoicism is the ritual of self-improvement versus the Four Agreements, which is a ritual of self-regulation.
Hmm.
What stoicism tells you to do is really pretty simple. It's like 7 habits of highly successful people.
Right.
All you do is you say these are the improvements I want to make. Well,
And it's just this. This is all you got to do. It sounds so easy.
no, but what's the problem is making the ritual,
That's right.
right? Oprah's trying to teach women to think, well, how are you going to feel about this? How are you going to feel about that? That's a tool of self-regulation. The
Right.
whole trick is making that, like for me, it's what's the worst that can happen, right?
Right.
Uh, is this the one I've had to adopt since I've met you? Is it a truck that I don't need to chase? Because I like to chase trucks.
You don't understand how fun it is.
That's one of the things I've had to learn since I. So don't chase trucks. But so but if you get a stoicism, it's just like what are the virtues, right? That you're trying to kind of, and what are you working on right now? So if I wake up, I go to bed at night. I wake up in the morning. I say, what am I going to do today?
Mm.
How am I going to advance my virtues?
Mm.
And when you go to bed at night, you say, how do I? You should write it in a diary. How did I do
Yeah,
with my virtues? But this is why it's so important to write diaries,
that's
because
right.
a diary is your means of self-regulation. It's a reason of producing stoicism.
It's
That's why
interesting.
you do it.
I started keeping it here since we're talking really. I'm on volume 5, and it's like I look at it as a ship's log.
Yes.
And you plot where you're at and where you're going and what you're doing as you do it, and it gives you a sense of direction and charts your functionality along that path.
Yes.
And it's like because I used to ask this question like this. Okay, a boat without a rudder goes where? It's up to random elements. Then if you've got no rudder, you got to have a rudder and you have to have an intention.
Right.
Then you can define a destination and determine where you're going as opposed to being reactive to your environment.
Right. So if you start out praying in bed at night, dear God, here's the things I did good today.
Mm.
Here's the things I did bad, and here's how I'm going to improve. Right? You can start doing that like as soon as you can fucking talk. Right.
Right.
Right. If you take that into the diary, here's the things, you're a kid, right? Keep your diary. If you turn that into a journal, except now you have goals, because doing right and wrong begins to be too small a barrier,
That's right.
right? Right. And so when you got up to the next one is how do I become virtuous? How do I become excellent? Right? How do I achieve excellence? Right. So what this is what stoicism is. It's the culmination of the Greek method.
Okay.
And so that's all you're trying to achieve. And so the problem I keep saying with the reason we failed religion is, in other words, we failed to transition from our religion, is we failed to understand the natural law and see and make a code like equivalent of a Bible, right? what's the Jewish legal thing? It's the Torah, right?
Right.
We failed to write this down, and we failed to stick with the discipline. Discipline we do,
Yes.
right? And then we just maintain that discipline of self auditing, and made the discipline of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, which is basically, can I speak? Can I make an argument? And in other words, can I make an argument, or at least can I make can I be logical? And then rhetoric is, can I then argue, debate? Right. And so we didn't keep the pyramid. So when I say it wasn't just the left.
No, it was a distortion of the industrialization.
Right. And
which is funny because it's like I marked the industrial age as beginning in 1776 with the creation of the first commercial steam engine.
Yes. Well, this is the argument, right? It starts in it starts in the late 1700s, but it's definitely there by 1830. So everybody uses I'm not going to stick my head out like the fucking gopher. I did it again. Stick my head out to the gopher, get wet. I'm going to go with 1830. But I mean, we're here in Connecticut, we've got a settlement from 1830 that's still working.
Yeah.
You can go visit it, and they keep it they keep it a living village.
Yes.
Forgot what its name is now. It's escaping me. It's up
Where is it?
It's in north of Connecticut, near the Massachusetts border.
I've been there.
Have you been there? A lot of people have been there, right? I went there a lot as a kid, and it really stuck with me about the blacksmith and the making the cheese and the milk. I'm like, I grew up on a farm anyway. I mean, I know the difference was
1830s village.
Yeah, it's 1830s village. It's
in Massachusetts.
No, it's in Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut.
It's right on the border, because there's
Old Sternbridge.
Yes, Old Sturbridge Village. Yes, exactly.
Sturbridge.
And my favorite reason going there is because they have maple sugar candy. When I was a little kid,
I know what you're talking about, man.
Maple
that stuff
sugar
is
candy.
to die for.
It's the best candy. And if after that it's chocolate, and it's all downhill after that.
Oh my.
But anyway, so they kept it alive. And this goes with Luke's kind of argument, is that, we've lost basic human competency. And I didn't really think of it in these terms, because I keep going from his framework, which is even more granular. Like, you should know how to do Boy Scout stuff.
You need to know how to make twine.
Or twine. I still think it's funny you started with that one, but it's true. His reasoning is logical. But you need to be able to make shelter and fire, right, and rope, and if you understand, you really know how to get water. And once you understand that stuff, it's like reading and writing and arithmetic, right? I mean, how often do you have to really do all that, today, right? But you do need to know, because you forget. Well, it's the same thing with self-regulation, stoicism, continuous recursive self-regulatory advancement, evolution, right? That's right. What either the four agreements, which is the feminine version, or the more rigorous masculine version of stoicism. It's the same idea, right? If you told somebody to do the four agreements and then keep a diary of what you did, what you succeeded at, what you failed at, and how you want to be improve in the future, you will become that, because that's programming, right? And so we find that people do it. So why didn't we? So the reason we're in trouble is we didn't pay the cost of discipline. We didn't pay the cost of physical fitness. We didn't pay the cost of mindful fitness. And we said, it's all over. We don't have to worry anymore.
Oh,
everybody's a special snowflake, a flower that will bloom naturally into whatever. And because all nature's limits are gone. And we're just going to teach you about political indoctrination. And then we can fit a little arithmetic and reading and maybe a sketch of science in there.
Luke talks about it well, which is the issue is the removal of natural constraints, the distance from natural
Right.
pruning, and I think that just has to do with the expansion of the potentials that occurred with the industrialization.
Right.
With the limits got blown away so fast by our potentials that we thought they just stopped existing, because they did for generations. They stopped existing essentially, and it's like, okay.
Well, I would say, here's how I would look at it, is that it takes 100 years for ideas to die off. So, right, so that's what happened, right? It took about 100 years for the people who had those habits to die off. And meanwhile, this other stuff was happening. You still had that framework down there, even though it was declining. By the time we get to the 50s, right, the 40s and 50s, the post-war period, we've had the culmination of the European Civil War, the World Wars. We've had the failure of the first Marxist project come to the West as the race Marxist project, right? With this culmination now in the woke is the highest level achieved of it. So we've had that program come here, and meanwhile we weren't maintaining the things that were basically metaphysical presumptions of gravity, and we're expecting nothing to change. This is why I always laugh at liberals. It's like, or women. It's like, you move the needle from here to here, you expect that this thing's going to stay steady. It doesn't. It goes here to counteract it. If you move the needle here, it'll go here to counteract it. You're always going to preserve the equilibrium. Well, I mean, there's some things that work out pretty okay. One is that, well, men and women want to go in the workforce and make money. Well, what happened? Reproduction collapsed. All right. So, well, was that a good exchange? Doesn't look like it. All right. So, so you said, so the problem with there's a problem with people still having this ideal type idea. If we all did this,
Right.
Instead of if there's an
Well,
equilibrium and if one's going to go the other way.
It's an interesting function, because it's like there is two presumptions of ideal type. One which recognizes that there's an ideal woman and an ideal man, and one which recognizes ideal human being, which is asexual. And it's like, okay, one of them is stupid and the other one is fit.
Well, but the asexual person fits the industrial age concept of a manufactured part or widget. How many times do you encounter in your profession? I'm just curious, it's very interesting to me, that people think about the body as a machine, and in other words, as a machine with mechanical parts instead of a system of cooperating cells, right? I mean, I don't know how often that happens.
Right. Now, the nearest analog to that will be that I imagine this conversation, because my granddad was half Italian, half German. So I imagine the conversation, which he goes like this. He goes to the doctor and he says, I'm half Italian. I just love my pasta and I love my bread. Do you have a medicine for that? And why, yes, I do. You're diabetic and we have medicine for that. And it just doesn't work. And what happens is you'll get worse, and you'll lose body parts, and you'll eventually have a heart attack and die. And that's what happened to my grandfather. And it's like, okay, but that's a mechanical way of looking at it,
right?
Instead of understanding the nature of the system, which is really, you probably not ought to indulge in those things that you like so much.
Actually, can I ask you this question again? Related to that issue. Is okay. I'm going to lose the fact that I was trying to make the argument about people assume things are mechanical because the Industrial Revolution treated people as parts and they're not, right? That's like that. But you're a DO, right? And there's a MD, right? DO and MD. Okay, so so why did this focus on disease and focus on the whole person? Why did this thing come about in medicine? Why did these?
So the osteopathic function came out late 1800s, and it spun off into the chiropractic as well. So the chiropractors went off away from the prescriptions, The
Oh,
osteopaths they were MDs that were trained and did manipulative medicine.
okay.
The MDs got got the attention of the Rockefellers early in the 20th century. And they eliminated the homeopaths and other marginal groups that could not be utilized for Rockefeller, to advance the Rockefeller interests. And so it's like right now we're at the end of the rope with the Rockefeller monopolization of medicine, which is
Right.
absolute mechanical, which is, and it's responsibility avoidance, right? So you go back to my granddad, and it's like, yeah, we have medicine for that. So it's disease management as opposed to cure.
Yes.
Because it's like you're worth way more sick to us than you are if we cure you. Because I can only get paid to cure you
Why
once.
is the ratio so high, MD versus DO?
What do you mean?
I mean, how many? Which is
Oh,
there's more MD.
they were suppressing the DOs for a long time.
Oh, I see.
So my grandfather was a doctor in California, and he hated the DOs because the DOs were not allowed to be in the military. My grandfather served in World War I, and then he served in World War II as a physician. And he came back, and it's like the DOs were not allowed to go to war. And so they stayed home and made bucks, right? And that made him mad. And it's like what happened in about 1960, and I don't remember the exact date, but it was about 1960, is the MDs in California were offering dollars to they were taking money like $200 or $2,000 or some number for a DO to get an MD qualification. So they recognize that if you pay the fare, you can get recognized, and then the DOs use that as leverage in the courts to prove that you recognize us as equivalent. Therefore, we should be licensed and fully recognizable. And so that's what happened, and that so there was a suppression. That's the short version of it.
I just think it's interesting because I've learned a lot from you, of course. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting. It keeps coming up, and I think of why did this thing happen, and why don't people know about DOs as much as they do MDs? And you look it up, and it says, well, it's basically a focus on disease versus care, right? Care and cure, right? I mean, it's very. I would think of it. I think of it as a very mechanical. Right. And you guys are sort of the step before you get into homeopathic, right? I mean, it's like there's like homeopathic, chiropractic, DO, MD, and God knows what specialist over here, right? Am I close or no?
It's close enough, and it's like, but you gotta. It's like all things. It's distributions, and so the median is going to be different, but there's going to be large overlaps.
Is there any region that has more DOs than?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to. I would. They're building up those medical schools all over the place, so they're expanding their representation in the field.
How many more hours do you have to be of training? Do you have to be?
You can't. They fill up all the hours in all the places.
No, what I mean is, I'm just saying, an MD is required less hours of training than a DO. Why? What?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's what it said. If I look it up, that's what.
Oh, really?
I
don't know the answer to that, and it's like my presumption was that med school they just fill all your hours up.
Oh, I see.
And it's like, okay, they just find something else to fill it with. It's just rough.
Oh God. Anyway, all right. So I was trying to. If I'm not wasting, am I going over your time? Fine. Okay. So I said that the Industrial Revolution brought about this mechanical concept of man, which fed into the Weberian ideal type, which was of man, right? And of course, this becomes the problem of the industrialization, right? Treating people as widgets.
Yes.
Which becomes the political problem, right? Treating people as widgets, which still is with us today a little bit, in that we're trying to make the one I complained about is psychology, right? Psychology is trying to create an ideal person when basically what they're trying to create is a female.
Right.
Which is fucking hysterical to me. Which is so which I never find a therapist that disagrees with me. when I talk, because I have to run my stuff by these people, right? I can't just assume I'm right, right? I have to run it by
have
them.
to test it.
And then you hit the idiots, and I disregard the idiots. But if you run it by them, like, oh, that's right. They don't know what to do about it, though.
There's no answer.
Yeah, we know what to do. So this is why I'm trying to figure if I can do this, because I can't think about our stuff all the time, right? I just get tired. And so I think about, well, maybe I could use some of the time I'm not being as constructive with, and work as something edge between something that's somewhere near uh, uh, Noah's work, because he's really he doesn't frame it this way, but what he's doing, teaching age, and he's teaching stoics. He's got a lot more framework around it, but it's essentially producing stoicism.
Right.
And I keep seeing this everywhere in the world. Why? Because it's the answer, right? It's the only stoicism is the only religion that's not a religion. It's just cognitive behavioral therapy, education.
Right.
So what is the purpose of religion? To produce mindfulness. Okay, well, that's why we have it. We need mindfulness, it turns out. Right? And
Yes.
so the purpose of religion is to produce mindfulness. And you can produce that a lot of ways. It turns out that the best way is to combine natural law and stoicism. Right? So natural laws, here's how the world is, and here's how to be a good, I would say natural laws, Christian love, and stoicism. Right? It's the three things. And so if you combine those three things, you've pretty much got a religion that's non-false, right?
Right.
Add ancestor worship, and now you've got a real religion that's non-false, which is basically, it'd be sort of more like the Orthodox Church, which is it's national, and in some sense, a religion that would do this, that would send ancestor worship, would end up being a national
Yeah.
religion. So I would like to do something where I can put out, at least write a paper or give a few papers to try to insert this idea into the psychological discipline, because it's actually their problem. It's the problem that's facing the discipline in therapy, is that is the difference between female desire to evade responsibility, right, and the male desire. And so they have to find an outlet for emotions. And we have to find a way to bear responsibility. Right. I mean, it's really that difference. And so it's very interesting to work on that, just like it's interesting for you and I to work on religion next, right? But this gets back to, yeah, well, if you're the most stoic guy I know, I bet over a year you could reduce it to first principles.
Okay. I take that bet. That's good.
I bet it would take a year.
That's a good.
If you just said, how do I do the X, Y, and Z? Because you do it all day. I mean, every time we talk, it's an extraordinarily consistent part of your behavior.
Huh.
And also why, you are not screw withable.
Unflippable, huh?
You just nothing. I mean, the love I show at you sticks, but I mean the nothing sticks in you at all. It doesn't seem. Is that true?
It's like the issue is what is to stick to, what's it going to stick to, right? And it's like if you have some obtuse surfaces that it can stick to, and that's evidence that that you're need sanding down, right? Because it shouldn't, it's external, it shouldn't attach.
Right. I had a thing with I had a conflict along these lines. Right? Conflict is that I developed, how do I make you go away? Right.
That's a useful skill, by the way.
Right. I got And my wife called it lying,
Huh.
right? And I'm like, well, it's like, it's how I could do that, or I could say it's none of your fucking business, or no, or no, that's too fucking stupid for me to even think about, or why the fuck are you wasting my time? Instead, I say something gracious, right? Well, I make something, and she called it
That's
lying.
interesting because I do something similar, which is like there's like putting out a social signal is all you're doing, which is this is over.
Yes.
Right? It's just like, okay, I've had a great time chatting with you today. I really have some things I need to attend to.
All right. So my problem with women is they're like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What are you thinking? First, A, it could be nothing.
Could
And
be.
B,
I know it, however hard that is for you to believe.
imagine. Otherwise, it's too complicated for you to understand.
There is that too. It's a category B
So,
or A.
so pick some segment of what I'm really thinking about and sedate her, that woman, with that. I'm sort of thinking about this. Well, a lot of stuff I think about is not going to be relevant to a woman, right? And so she'll just whatever. My wife, no, got to understand because she wants to keep pace, right? She wants to keep up with you, right? One of the things I love about her, right?
Right?
So I get the machine gun Kelly questions, like,
Oh yeah.
right? It's like, and like, so she calls it lying. And I'm like, it's not really lying. I just want you to stop. I want you to shut up and leave me alone. Go away. Drive me nuts.
Right?
Versus, I have a thing in business where if I say something in a deal, that's it doesn't matter.
That's closed, right?
That's it, right? If I make
Yes,
a
yes,
deal and I
yes.
said something, that's how it is. Doesn't matter what paper got signed, anything else. If I
Right.
said it, and this only comes back when you've made a promise, right, to someone, right, or
That's
deals,
right. That's right.
and they think something's not working out fairly, and I'm like, I don't care what you think. I promised them that. That's how it's got to be because my promise is part of my negotiating strategy,
That's right.
right? If I say it, that's the way it is. The second, it's sort of like the American thing, whereas like we want to give you freedom and democracy and wealth and prosperity, but what they don't say is you had to have natural law. You have to not elect somebody that's dangerous to yourself or your neighbors, and you have to be a good world citizen, or F and else. We make a mess of things. So
That's
if
right.
you choose better next time. Right? Well, my thing is, I never make a promise with a time commitment.
Right.
So if I say I'll make it happen, it may be tomorrow, it may
May
be in
take
the
a
next
while.
15 minutes, or it may be in the next 2 months. I will make
Right.
it happen, but I'm not going to promise a time commitment. But my wife used to get, you lie all the time. I don't agree with you. It's called manners. Shut the fuck up. Isn't good manners. It's none of your
That's
fucking
good. I would agree with that.
business.
I would be more specific. I would tend to agree with that. Yes.
Right. And then there's other thing is that you get with management teams. I was like, so this I'm trying to address the lying problem, right? Is so the other thing is that what can you understand,
Right.
right? So if let's for example, if I have a plan, and I not because I don't really plan, I make a strategy and I move the balls forward, right? So if I
Right.
have something I want to get to here, and you ask me something here in the middle, like we're way over here is the goal. You ask me something here in the middle, and I say, well, we're trying to move this, get to this. Well, that's just so that you can see that to there, right? If I tell
Yes.
you that other thing, then first of all, what happens is people try to be smarter than you. They're not going to be,
Good luck with that. Right.
right? And so it's just exhausting to have to come back and correct them. So he said, but you didn't tell me the whole thing. I'm like, if I told you the whole thing, A, you might not have believed me. You might not have understood it. You might have gamed it. I don't know. So I only tell you what you need to know to advance the next step.
Right.
Well, so the problem, what happens now is that they always think you have some fucking degree agenda, like it's like 40, it's like it's not 40 chest, it's 32-degree chest. And
Right.
they think you have something up. And then when you say, man, let's have a tuna salad for lunch, I don't feel like going. There's like they always assume there's like
Some agenda afoot.
Like I can't win.
That's right.
So, and then you have the problem where, some of the stuff I've done, you can't talk about, right? Because it's just, I've signed an agreement, says I can't talk about it, right? So how do you do that? Well, I can't, if I'm lying, if I deny.
No, I
Right?
say I'm not at liberty to discuss that, I'm afraid.
Well, then they just make more shit up.
Yes.
Right. And so you tell them something that's in public, right?
Okay
That's public knowledge. And okay, well, that's great. I don't mind if they run with that.
Right.
It's not actually false, it's just not completely true. Right. And so that's fine. It takes it off the table. So you have all these reasons. It's like, yeah, but is any of that lying? You know what I mean? It's like you're saying, it's like say we said, well, you have a 3-year-old. You can't tell them the whole sequence of
Oh
logic.
my, no.
Right? It's just, I got somebody mad. I said, the difference between you and me is the difference between you and the 5-year-old. That's not a statement about you being bad. That's just a statement about me being weird. Right? Right.
You can see how that might go across like a lead
Yeah,
balloon.
right. It's just, I can't, the problem is I can't let that stuff come out of my mouth.
So my wife would do this when she figured out this game with the kids. Kids would be asking some goofy question and keep on asking it. Doesn't matter how you answer it. And she figured out that if you make them ask the question, or you ask the question back at them, that stops the question.
It does.
And I'm like, what a brilliant insight.
Well,
Because it just turns it off.
Well, I did the same thing with my wife and my kids, right? So my son is the most fun, but Laura is gullible as hell. So she would go off on one of her 50 questions things, and I would just start deviating a little bit until I got to something absurd. Right. And she'd realize she'd been
I've been had.
she's just, you're breaking those little bonds of trust. Like,
Tiny bonds.
I can't help it. It's self-defense. I told you about this one before. My kid, my son, he was always asking. He was beautiful. He was adorable little kid. And I was always ask these questions, and I would just get this smile on my face, which would be I'd make up something that was absolutely ridiculous and see how long it took him to catch on. Well, that's really good training, actually, right?
Right.
Pull a wool over the kid's eyes, right? He would always catch on, right? He says, no, Dad, that's not right.
That's just wrong.
That's how does it really work? They're really fun when they're little. Well, just as soon as they can walk and talk. The whole baby thing is just drag. All right, so I've now used up our 2-hour time with this excellent little chat. So I guess we had a vacation day on work.
That was okay.
That was okay. There's a couple of good snippets in here in this one.
I think so.
Yeah.
So we go back to work tomorrow then, yeah?
Yep. Not too far on rights and obligations, really close. Another week or two. And that's because, now that you got it all captured, now there's this whole, does this go here? And we did a lot of that. It was yesterday. And so we're getting very close to the end, and I think it's all logical. And it's a strict construction from self-determination all the way up to works and principles. The next thing is due diligence, and we're there. Right? So we're getting that part down. And after that, we just have to say, okay, what laws are needed what changes in the law are needed, and put that over. I'm going to add the commonality, concurrency, and trifunctionalism series to that, to earlier in the document. With your stuff and my stuff, I'm pretty convinced with the chit chats I've had that we're pretty much right there on the physics. And so what I want to talk to you about tomorrow is how we move from that forward, because it sort of begs doing. I think we might have touched on this last week, and just as I started to get tired, it kind of begs on what's the sequence of steps, just like we've had in the past, where we've had this issue of saying, well, there's three ways of talking about this. Which way do we talk about it first when all of them are dependent on the others? So we have we go through all the laws first, and then do the logics and grammars and stuff, or we could do the first principles of the physical world, do the logics and stuff, and then do the cooperation. And I don't know what way to do that. And so tomorrow, that's what I'd like to settle. So net summary is the two core pieces of that we're trying to build here, that are the foundations for everything else. It may seem like it took us a long time and it was hard work and frustrating, but they're coming together pretty nicely. So our work is succeeding. All right. I love you, brother. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. I'll try to be on time.
Oh, well, I mean, it's usually me that's not on time. And that's what I just figured. It's like, yeah, I was figuring, he went off and did something to a car or something because I was late. All right. I love you, brother. See you tomorrow.
Bye. Hey, hit the buttons. And that one. And that one. Don't forget that one. And this stuff.
Subscribe, bell, leave comments.
Tell
Brady's handsome. He likes that.
All right, Curt.
Bye,
Have a
guys.
good day, sir.